Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am still on vacation. I'll be back on Sunday to live stream, of course, LCK, LPL, get back to up to speed with everything. But I figured I would share my thoughts on the coming LEC playoffs. I think that's important. Make sure my thoughts are out there. Sorry for the ghosts in the background. This is basically some AI thing that my editor is using to filter out all the noise because there's birds and people and, you know, kitchen and whatever. This is the only private location that I can currently find, so I hope it's passable. Either way, I want to make sure that my thoughts are out in the ether, so when they all come true, that I can take credit. You know how it is. All right. KC versus Koi. As I speak, I don't know, maybe this is too loud because someone just passed with a lawnmower. Someone's cutting grass. All right, KC versus Koi. So, KC versus Koi, I think the crucial thing the last time they faced off, I think the miss that KC had was in their prep work. Take a look at that Game 5 draft with the Pike and all that jazz. It didn't look too good. And I feel like KC really let themselves down with the preparation. And I think that KC's run in the LEC playoffs is mounting up to be exactly the same as the previous one, where they dropped really hard against G2 with that prep work, with Draven game against the Sire, where there were tanks on Kana and all that jazz. They were really underprepared, and G2 really took them to town because they just had better prep. But even there was a single game KC won where they showcased that they are better team fighters. If they are on even playing fields, they can beat anybody in league in the team fighting department. And I think when it comes to the prep work, I think G2 showed a very good mold as to why and what you want to target when you play against Koi specifically. I think the most important players to target in terms of their pool is Elioya and, of course, Mr. Alvaro. I think that Koi have realized this too, and they usually pick jungle support in the first three. I think that Jojo Pune and Mirwin specifically can always fill the champion in depending on the slot and the situation. I think the most important thing when you play against Koi is to challenge that support pool, deny the champions that Alvaro performs super well on, pick them away, really thin out the pool, and then find yourself in a position where that identity that Koi has when it comes to the jungle support, they always like to play very strong pairings. In that same game that I just mentioned with the Pike and, of course, the Wukong and that weird draft that, of course, Casey played, that was the same draft where they were playing Braum, and that's an Alvaro classic. I think you need to challenge him on the Braum, trade Rel Alistar, and of course, you want to, be aware of course, the Nico. If you can't play Alistar, Nautilus into the Nico, you can play it, but I think you just need to attack the sheer champion pool. Because I think when you get to the ranged champions, whether it's Nami, Milio, Kama, I think that this is where I think Targamas can provide an additional edge. And I think this should be the main focus for KC. Same thing for jungle. I think that as a player, Yike has expanded his pool throughout. I think that KC as well want to be able to play like the tanks in, of course, the jungle, just to set up kind of success. But I think that KC prep-wise, I think now with everything that is visible, I do think KC's biggest weakness throughout has been the preparationary work. Even their best of 5 against Team Heretics, I do think that some of their drafts were actually weaker on paper. So maybe this is something that is going to cost them all the way. Because I do think that KC, when they are playing good drafts, I do think they are the most complete team in the league right now. With that in mind, I do think that this is a very clear pitfall to drop into for KC, because I do think that their opponents in Koi and G2 have streamlined their identity the most clearly out of any of the other teams. I think that G2, of course, showed an improvement, but I do think that their victory against Fnatic, and now, of course, the pause that they had to take, I do think that it puts their gameplay in a bit of a different perspective, right? Their win against Fnatic, there were many games that were very close, right? That Fnatic easily could have won if they were a little bit better, but that's a Fnatic issue. I'm just saying G2 were in a position where they were in a losing position that they managed to claw back, but I don't think they get the same privilege against the likes of KC. There's definitely been games like that, a game that KC lost against Team Heretics. It was awfully close and unnecessarily bad. There's definitely an element of inconsistency on the way that KC play. But I think that the main thing for KC is the fact that their identity is a little bit too spread out. I think if they sharpen themselves and they hone in on, of course, making sure that there is facilitators in, of course, the jungle and the support role, and that they're playing carries on mid and top, I think they're always going to be super, super happy. I did think it was cool when they did play the Galio angle with the Lucian Nami. I think that shows a lot of growth that gets me excited for KC. I imagine people that are listening already, like you're recognizing that, oh, Yamato's about to say it, isn't he? He's about to say it. I am about to say it. I do think that KC will make it all the way and win the split. I think going through a path of resistance is insanely healthy. I think that KC, when they are on an even playing field, when they are there contesting setups, I do think that mechanically this is the most cohesive team. I think in the first series that they lost against Koi, the prep work was a big issue, but also that was probably one of the weakest performances from Kalis that we have ever seen. And I feel like Kalis is back, I think that was just kind of a blip in his career. And I think that now, when everything is on the line again, I do think that they're going to be able to, of course, make it. I think Case is going to win it all. I think they're just the most complete team. And as I mentioned before, I do think that the preparation and spreading themselves too thin in terms of what their identity is probably like the biggest problem that they can face. That's always very tricky when you're trying to expand, your level of play and, add additional layers to yourself. In that process, you need to break down what you already know. And the danger always in trying to getting, expanding and getting better and going deeper is that you might lose what makes you great, right? You might lose what makes you great. I don't feel the same way, about the classics, the KC classics, when it comes to like, oh, the locking Talia, that's a free win. The locking Oz, it's a free win. They are a little bit more spread out and a little bit more, let's say, flexible, but that can come at a detriment. I do still think that KC, most well-rounded team here. I think on the G2 side, the main thing that we can point to, right, even though the story of G2, even though KC's story can look very, very similar to what it did in the previous split, G2's story as well in terms of the renaissance that they kind of created in playoffs, then bouncing back, getting better. I think the main thing to highlight, of course, is that the solo lanes are playing much better than before. I think that's a place where KC can challenge them for sure. I think Hansama also looked to have very, very good form. And I think that the main thing that G2 have really, really hammered down on and really, really improved on is, of course, I just got a random message. What they can improve on is, of course, the jungle support synergy. I think that whenever we saw G2 jungle support be on the same screen, same page, I do think that they did a lot of good things. And I think the main difference, even though G2 series against Fnatic, there were games that were close, I do think still, regardless of what you wanted to say about Fnatic and all their issues and grabs saying 3 players are getting replaced and all that jazz, potentially, right? I do think that in that series in particular, the jungle support, Razork Mickey, in terms of how they drive the game, get leads in the game, they are very, very sharp. So they really put a different kind of pressure on you. And I don't think that Yike and Targamas have been very consistent in the split in terms of how they pressure in the jungle and support. So I do think G2 in that department will get a lot more breathing room. I am very, very intrigued and excited to see if BB and Caps are going to find ways to kind of break the meta and to kind of, leverage, this strength that they've had in the past in terms of being able to find deeper count picks as a series proceeds. Because I do think that when Kana plays all the standard stuff like Aatrox, Gnar, Jace, Gwen, I just kind of believe in him. It's really, really hard not to. It's to the point for me with Kana that I'm worried, Casey, that they're gonna have to battle, teams internationally about, extending my man's contract. But I'm sure Kana, feels a level of loyalty to, of course, Casey, because they hired him as a mercenary and basically revived his whole damn career. My device is getting too hot, so I don't know if my video quality is going to look shit because the sun. Maybe I take it out of the sun and I give you guys a little bit of a different angle. A little bit of a different angle. It was in direct sun, so it was cooking up, and I don't want it to explode in my hand. I know I'm old and washed. But and I don't need my hands when I play League, but I want to keep them. I want to keep him. Okay, back to the conversation of G2. I do think that there's definitely clear improvements, clear improvements. I do think that in between, meaning in between objectives, can get better. And there is a part of me that trusts him a lot less in losing positions. I think that this is still a team that really, really loves to carry momentum over. And I think that is true for Skumon, Labrov, and Hans Sama. I think these are guys that are very, very good from playing from winning positions. I think that they are very good at driving the game through them. And I don't think that you'll have the same luxury as you did against, of course, Fnatic, where you can just come back after comeback after comeback, because Fnatic can't choose a winning fight, even if their whole career depended on it, because apparently now some of them might get placed. Another reference. So I'm a believer of KC all the way. I think KC is going to make it. I hope KC goes to MSI. And if they don't, I think probably Koi will have shown me something that, proves to me that they belong there. I'll be doing the live viewing of the finals. Let's see if my prediction will come true. I wanted to add, Koi is maybe a team that I talk less about often. But I think Koi, I think for me, what makes me excited about Koi is that I feel like they're finally breaking through on reoccurring issues for this team. Right? I'm excited to see that Jodipune is finding his form in the league. Still don't think that he's like insane. I think he's decent. He's kind of where I expected him to be in terms of his level of play. I think Super, especially the KC series, broke a ceiling for himself and really, really conquered his own demons, which I think is super, super cool. I think it's kind of like the same thing that anyone Legends is kind of going through in the LPL is that certain carries, certain players, until they prove you otherwise, you're going to kind of interpret their ceiling for something pretty much, right? We're going to interpret Super's ceiling as a player at the point he has shown so far. And breaking that ceiling is insanely, insanely difficult. And I think that in that lies, of course, the potential ceiling of the whole team too. How good can Super and, of course, Jojo Pyun and additionally Midwin be as carries? Can they compete and be, the best one in the league? Because I think that's the main thing that would kind of hold them down. Because I think in terms of cohesiveness, and I think in terms of ideas to end the game, I think this is something that was really, really lacking for Koi, where they got leads and then they kind of squandered them over and over again for the entire last year and also the beginning of this one, of course. I feel now they have found like really, really clear pathways to win. They don't feel the need to extend the game. They understand, we're taking enemy camps, we're getting the push outs, we're super, super happy. We don't need to do anything. And we don't need to invent new ways to create new leads. They were always playing so rushed for no reason when they could have just let the game speak for itself, objective after objective, get the farm, find the spikes, I feel like this is something they're very conscious of. And I think they're always, in line together with the same decision, which is a massive strength, of course, being on the same page. But Super broke his ceiling. Fair play against KC, looked good. Of course, against G2, looked a little bit less, but that's the challenge of, having, only 12 hours, of prep time for the next BO5. That's a part of the challenge. Now they got to breathe, they got to rest, and now they can prepare again against KC, which they did a good job of previously. So I don't want to judge them too hard on, of course, that G2 series, because G2 did have an extra day to rest and to breathe, which I think goes a super, super long way in terms of your preparation work, because you can sit down and actually watch your opponent play in the most fresh way possible too. So that's probably, G2's biggest advantage is they are hoping now that KC and Koi is a series they get pushed all the way. But last in winter, that happened too. Both teams got pushed all the way. And the beauty of that, you can see it in any competition. The teams that get pushed and pressured, they just turn out to be better. They just turn out to be better in any competition. Think about any World Cup, right? No, not World Cup, but the last two World Championships. The teams that went 3-0 always struggled in the quarterfinals. Always, always. Think about this year, right? LNG, 2024, LNG lost Weibo Gaming. They got completely smoked. They won 3-0. JNG went 3-0. What happened? He went to 5 games with freaking FlyQuest, right? Fair play to FlyQuest, but when you look at the teams that had to go through fire and fury, Bilibili, and of course T1. They got really, really shaped in that. And you look at T1's Worlds run, there was always a point in the tournament where they got punched in their mouth. And then they were like, yo, we need to get our shit together. You guys remember 2023 as well, the Worlds that they won, with the squad after the DRX one. They got punched in the mouth. First, they almost lost to Team Liquid. You guys remember Pioshi was kicking them around like a football, and they almost lost to Team Liquid. And then, of course, they played a game against Gen.G where they tried to match, the melee versus melee situation. It was a Alistar Kaiser game from T1, and they went back to the drawing board and said, you know what? This is not us. Let's try to play as much as us as possible and see where we land. And then they switched up. And then, of course, they changed the whole meta of the tournament. Obviously, now I'm going a little bit too deep, but my point is, going through resistance can be super, super healthy. I think sometimes it's even better than being able to watch your opponent, because they might find out things about you, but you find out even more about yourself. And you realize then what works. And there is not a limitless amount of bans, in the game. There's still a lot of bans that you need to do against KC. So let's see where we go. I think KC, back-to-back champions, they got it. G2 is going to drop. The social media man is going to come into the comments and say, oh, here we go again. You're doubting us. No. In the Fnatic G2 conversation, I'm with you. Fnatic G2, I'm never going to adapt you again. I'm sorry. But this is different. And if it's not different, then, just send me on some Red Bull challenge, I can send me on some Red Bull challenge. I'll skydive or something. You guys are sponsored by Red Bull. You figure it out. All right, homies, catch you on Sunday. All the best.